Hard to believe the queen is gone. If there is a queen of rock and roll, it's gotta be Tina Turner. A friend of mine said it felt like she had always been there. And yeah, her recording career goes back as far as the late 50s. Nobody sang like her. Nobody could command the stage the way she did.
Yo!
In an industry that seems so obsessed with the sex sells approach, her sexuality felt like it was tied to the music she sang, so effortless. One of the problems I've always had with the Tina story is that it seems to obsess more over the abusive relationship with Ike Turner than the music itself. And yeah, despite Ike and Tina's massive success, Ike's horrific domestic abuse has been the subject of a biopic and several documentaries. And despite how big Tina got in her solo career, the shadow of Ike still seemed to loom behind her. Make no mistake, it took unprecedented courage for her to put her livelihood on the line and walk away from Ike's control and become a star in her own right. But I've always hated in the Tina documentary that we get to her role in Thunderdome and then cut to an interview where she's grilled about Ike again.
Out of all the success that I was having, why are they talking about Ike and Tina?
So for this playlist, I really want to focus on the music itself and not harp so much on this dark aspect of Tina's career. The music is what we should remember. As always, we're formatting this like a vinyl record, no more than 26 minutes a side. The first side is going to mostly be Ike and Tina tunes, while the second side will focus on her solo stuff. We don't need another hero. All we want is this Tina Turner playlist. I gotta tell you, the debut single for Ike and Tina Turner, A Fool in Love, is pretty damn heavy for 1960. And a lot of that has to do with the vocal performance of Tina Turner, still going by her birth name Anna Mae Bullock before the release of the single. Outside of a few blues singers like Big Mama Thornton, there weren't a ton of women singing like this on the radio at the turn of the decade. In fact, she wasn't even supposed to sing it at all. Ike Turner wrote it for Art Lassiter. When he didn't show up at the recording session, Anna Mae, one of many singers Ike had employed, suggested taking the mic.
When I started singing, Ike had, mostly male singers, and I wanted to sound like they sound.
It really is amazing that she can transcend gender roles this early in her career, given the same raunchy rock and roll performance as any of her male contemporaries. With an offer from Sue Records to press the single with the recorded vocal, Ike named Anna Mae Tina Turner and the act was born, giving Ike his first hit since his iconic 1951 single Rocket 88. Juxtaposed with those gospel-style backups, Fool in Love still sounds fantastic. Ironically, Ike and Tina were just starting to become romantically involved and would marry 2 years later. They had a number of singles throughout the 60s, but it was a collaboration with producer Phil Spector without Ike's production, I don't know who's worse, Ike or Phil, that would yield another classic. The result was River Deep Mountain High, one of Phil's personal favorite singles. The Wrecking Crew is playing, Darling Love and the Blossoms are singing backups. But as always with any Phil Spector song, the real star is reverb. Lots and lots of reverb. I'm not kidding. This may actually be his worst recording in that regard. I mean, the really cool musical arrangement and Tina's heavy vocal really get buried in the mix. I heavily considered including one of their live versions or the stripped-down bluesy approach to their 1974 version, which is really worth checking out. But in the end, I just decided to include the original. It really is a classic. Though not so much at the time, the single didn't really chart. I guess I wasn't the only person who had problems with the production. Nevertheless, it did open some doors for Ike and Tina to open for bands like the Rolling Stones. Tina and Mick Jagger would certainly produce a number of memorable performances together. But for me, it's a reimagining of a Beatles song, Come Together, where Tina really puts her own stamp on it.
One thing I can tell you is you got to be free. Come together.
I used to cover the song live with Sophia Urista. Having grown up listening to the original, hearing this swampier arrangement with Tina's raspy vocal practically blew my mind. The arrangement doesn't stray too far from the Beatles version, and Ike's guitar playing doesn't have that bite that George Harrison produces, so it's really Tina who's leading the charge here. The dynamics, her timing, her tone, her timbre. I mean, this really is some of the best rock and roll singing I've ever heard in my life. And that's a bold statement considering this is one of John Lennon's most famous performances. And it would only get better live when she would amp up the intensity. This is really where she started to become a household name through her dynamic stage presence and the sensual nature of her voice. And if there's one rock and roll cover she really made her own, it's Creedence Clearwater Revival's Proud Mary. You know, the one they start off nice and easy, even though they never ever do nothing nice and easy, and finish the song nice and rough. This was their biggest hit, top 5 in the Billboard charts, and I think for a lot of people, this is the definitive version of Proud Mary. And I love the Creedence version, it's one of their best. But if Tina's arrangement of Come Together lifted off the track slightly from the original, this one shot into the stratosphere. The dynamics are just infectious, and I really like Ike's low vocal complementing Tina. And when the song picks up, the horn lines really stand out, along with the call and response vocals from the Ikettes. I feel like the lyrics take on a whole new meaning with Tina's vocal. John Fogerty said he wrote the song after being discharged from the National Guard, and obviously the counterculture movement really took to the song about working for the man and the freedom of traveling on a riverboat. But with Tina, you get an even greater sense of liberation as she hitches a ride on the riverboat queen. Whether this is because it's coming from the point of view of a black woman in 1970, it's foreshadowing her eventual liberation from Ike Turner, or she's simply just really digging the song, you can't help but feel so captivated by this iconic performance. And speaking of the counterculture movement, Ike wrote a politically charged ballad called Workin Together, a very different song for them, but no less emotional. I've talked often on this channel that 1970 felt like a very turbulent year with the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and the Kent State massacres, and you really feel all that in the song. The R&B vibe is so uplifting with the Kings of Rhythm, Ike adding a Leslie effect to his guitar, and Tina's vocal is as soulful as ever. How amazing is it that she can go from singing with such excitement and seduction on Proud Mary to such sublime melancholy with the lines, "Let us put our hate aside and let love be our guide," which is very clairvoyant in these times. You know, listening to this song again just reminded me why I love music from this era, despite being born long after the fact. And with the loss of giants like Tina Turner, it really does remind us that we really are coming to the end of an era. As the 1970s rolled on, Tina began to write many of her own songs, the best known being a somewhat autobiographical number called Nutbush City Limits, Nutbush, Tennessee being where Tina was born and raised.
Well, I'm Tina, and I was born in Nutbush City Limits. They call it Nutbush.
This is just a fun rocker, and supposedly Mark Bullen from T-Rex is playing on it, though honestly, trying to find out who played on these records is not so easy. I'm not sure I dig the Moog synthesizer all that much. This was used on a lot of their recordings from the time. But as always, Tina's voice is guttural, confident, and she seems to be having a good time singing about her roots. At this point, Tina's star was rising beyond Ike Turner. She would release a solo album in 1974 and appear in the film adaptation of The Who's Tommy, portraying the iconic Acid Queen, a prostitute paid to cure Tommy from being deaf, dumb, and blind by putting him in a metal suit with needles? Who cares? This song's awesome. Once again, Tina just launches this song into completely different airspace, and it certainly helps having Pete Townsend, Keith Moon, and especially John Entwistle's bass playing with her. You know, Tina spoke about how she, as a black woman, had a hard time crossing over as a rock and roll artist, considering how rigidly radio stations label everything.
Radio programmers don't program you as a black person, rock and roll. You're R&B because of your color.
But if this performance doesn't convince you that Tina is a rock god, the whole way her vibrato and timbre add so much soul to this progressive rock track, I don't know what will convince you. I mean, this is a film that features The Who, Eric Clapton, Elton John as the pinball wizard, and Tina may actually be the most memorable part of the film. Okay, that's side one. For side two, we're discussing her solo career. Following a very intense separation from Ike Turner, about 8 years where not much seemed to happen, leading the public to believe that Tina was washed up.
Started working to try to get a record deal. Nobody would touch Tina Turner.
Until her 1984 opus, Private Dancer. The best known song, of course, is What's Love Got to Do With It?
What's love got to do with it?
Which became the title of the 1993 biopic, and, well, I should disclose, in case I haven't whined about it enough on this channel, I really don't like the sound of 80s production, and this album is no exception. Doesn't mean it's a bad album, I just really need to look past the drum machines, DX7 keyboards, and processed vocals. But in a way, it really does make Tina's bluesy vocals stand out even more. So What's Love Got to Do With It was written and produced by Terry Britten, who had produced many classics with her and co-written with Graham Lyle. That's Terry playing guitar on the track. The song was shopped around to a few artists before reaching Tina, who had made something of a comeback with her 1983 rendition of Let's Stay Together. I'll talk about that later. And the rest is history. The song became a #1, and Tina became the oldest female solo artist at age 44 to have a #1 in the Hot 100. That is amazing. Back in History of Rock, the 80s, I mentioned that with artists like Madonna, I felt the music and performance didn't match the overtly sexual vibe they were going for. But with 44-year-old Tina, she totally sells it. Those seductive low notes matched by that iconic belting chorus, she really saves the song from that dated 80s production. And credit to Terry, the melody is very catchy. And would you believe Tina didn't really like the message of the song, a sort of detachment of love from physical attraction?
In my case, love has a lot to do with it, I'm sorry.
Man, talk about owning a song you're not even really fully behind the message to. Tina also covers Better Be Good to Me, originally by the band Spector from 1981. Very much a new wave track. Tina gives it more of a classic rock vibe, like a Rolling Stones song, produced this time by Rupert Hine. Seriously, some of her inflections really do come off like Mick Jagger. Or has Mick been copying her this whole time? Honestly, I like this rocker better than most mainstream rock that was coming out in the mid to late 80s. Even though she didn't write the lyrics, Tina commented that the song felt more her. When she gets to that vamp, Why Can't You Be Good to Me, it really does feel like she's channeling all the pain, anger, and trauma from the past into a very uplifting melody that only she can deliver. Also, a little side note, her touring band is awesome, especially the late Kenny Moore, who really leaves Ike in the dust with his dynamic presence and playing. One more song from this album, the title track, which was actually written by Mark Knopfler. Mark had intended to release it as a Dire Straits song, but felt the lyrics were better suited for a female voice. And essentially, it's about a hooker. But according to Tina, she didn't really consider the song to be about a hooker. She just loved how unique the song was, from the chord changes to the lyrics, and I totally understand, it may be the best written song on the album. Whatever feeling Tina is channeling, it works perfectly. Due to issues with the record company, Mark didn't perform on the song, though curiously the other Dire Straits members are playing on it. The song's guitar solo is played by Jeff Beck. As if this collaboration couldn't get even more epic. It's not Jeff's best solo, but when else are you going to hear Jeff Beck and Tina Turner playing together? Now, unlike the Tina documentary that shows 5 seconds of her in Mad Max Thunderdome and then goes back to talking about Ike fucking Turner, I'm actually going to talk about the song Tina recorded for the movie We Don't Need Another Hero. And honestly, despite what I've said about 80s production, this might be my favorite Tina Turner song. It really comes down to that incredible chorus, once again written and produced by Terry Britten. The lyrics do follow the themes of the film, which featured Tina as Aunty Entity.
You think I don't know the law? Wasn't it me who wrote it?
And revolve around a group of children looking to find life beyond the depressing dystopian setting. I'm not so sure following Mel Gibson is the best way to do that in any situation. But even without the context of the film, there is a real-world interpretation of wanting to know beyond what exists in front of us. Is there a better life for this last generation? Are we ever gonna make the change? And with Tina screaming out that chorus, It really does make you just want to fly away with her and discover your own Tomorrowland. The Best, originally a Bonnie Tyler song, and admittedly, this one might be a little heavy-handed considering how overused it is in media and live events, but you can't deny this is one of Tina's signature songs. Yeah, the 1989 production is very stadium rock, leading up to the looming alternative rebellion, but if I'm going to listen to a late 80s stadium rock song, this is the voice I want singing on it. Again, Tina just commits to this performance. I know this is going to come off as very corny, but she simply is the best. One more song for the main list, and considering I'm a huge James Bond fan, I'm part of the Bond podcast y'all can check out, I gotta include GoldenEye. It happens to be my favorite James Bond film, aided by the fact that I play the Nintendo 64 game so often, and the theme song was sung by none other than Tina Turner. Considering the James Bond franchise already has an impressive roster of artists to sing the theme songs, Shirley Bassey's Goldfinger being among the most famous, it totally makes sense to have Tina's seductive voice play over the opening credits. It was surprisingly written by Bono and The Edge, which is odd, the song doesn't sound like U2 at all. It carries a lot of that signature John Barry orchestration to color the track. By the end, Tina just starts wailing with that signature vibrato. See, now I'm wondering what would have happened if James Bond went up against Aunty Entity.
Congratulations. You're the first to survive the audition.
Anyway, that's our playlist. Let's talk bonus tracks. The first one I want to include is her and Ike performing Otis Redding's I've Been Loving You Too Long, which I first heard in the Rolling Stones Gimme Shelter film. Talk about never doing anything nice and easy. Her voice is as soulful as ever, and just the way she practically makes love to that mic, it's, yeah.
It's nice to have a chit occasionally.
Sweet Rhode Island Red was the follow-up single to Nutbush, once again written by Tina. It's just a fun rocker, not much else to say. And Tina wrote 3 for 3 with Sexy Ida. There's actually 2 versions of this. The first one being more funky with a Sly and the Family Stone kind of vibe, with a clav and a horn section, while the second is more of a straight-up rocker. I gotta say, part 1 tickles my love for funk more, so that's what I'm including. I thought about including one of Tina's Rolling Stone covers, but in going through her many adaptations, the one that really stood out was her doing Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love. It has kind of a Papa Was a Rolling Stone vibe musically, a more seductive funk groove, and when Tina's voice comes in, she proves that rock and roll is not just a man's genre, and she can deliver these sexually charged lyrics just as well as Robert Plant. Maybe even better. As I said before, Let's Stay Together was the start of her comeback and would appear on Private Dancer. Again, you're not gonna get me to praise the production, especially compared to the original Al Green classic, but let's just say Tina's vocals do a lot of heavy lifting, especially in the beginning before the drums kick in. And finally, I thought it was best to include a song from her follow-up album to Private Dancer, Break Every Rule. To be honest, the album didn't really grab me too much, but I did enjoy the opening track, produced again by Terry Britten, Typical Male. It's got kind of a Prince vibe to it, and features Phil Collins on drums pretty unmistakably. And I mean, how many more times can I say Tina's voice is godlike? As always, there's a link to a streaming playlist in the description below, and be sure to comment on what your favorite Tina Turner songs are. If y'all can like and subscribe, it would really help me out a lot. If you want to go that extra step, you can sign up for my Patreon page, where I'll be releasing an extended version of this video early, and you get to watch it commercial-free. Rest in peace, Queen Tina. You simply were the best.